on September the 20th, 1897. Queen Victoria's down in Jubilee year.
September the 20th, 1897. Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee year. That's when I was born. Hubert Trotman. The eldest of four. And my father, he took me everywhere with him, called me my boy Bert. Soon enough, when I was still young, war broke out. I spent my 18th birthday at the Dardanelles in Turkey. And my 19th birthday, I was on the Somme in France, fighting. My 20th birthday, I was recovering from severe injuries in London. And on my 21st birthday, well, I'll never forget that, we've been fighting against the Germans for the St. Leger racecourse, which some of you might have heard of. We've been battling for a long time, and at the end of the day, we won it, but we hadn't had any rations for 2 days. But bang on my birthday, a parcel arrived from home. And I unpacked it. There was cakes, pastries, 2 loaves of bread, and a big slab of butter. And I shared it with my comrades. It was the best gift ever. I got injured 3 times. 3rd time, I was shot with this bullet. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start at the beginning. I was a man before my time. When I was born, my father took the cradle down to the bakehouse, because we were a family of bakers, see. And he set me beside him and he talked to me. That's what they said. He called me my boy Bert, and we were as one. We went everywhere together as I was growing up, until I went to school. When I was 5, I started at the council school, and I was doing well. So when I got to standard 3, the headmaster, he was a proper old veteran at coaching boys. He took a dozen of us and he gave us extra classes. We got to school at 8:30 while the other children started at 9 o'clock. And we stayed an hour at the end of every day. And we went to school on Saturday mornings. Do you go to school on Saturdays? Would you want to? No. Well, I studied hard. And under his coaching, I managed to pass my scholarship to go to the grammar school. I got top of the county. So I went to school, but I still helped out my father with the baking. And also, my father was a volunteer fireman. So I would go with him and make the tea and ring the bell. When I was older and my father couldn't make the shout, I would go in his place and I would put on his uniform and I was accepted as a fireman in my own right. Now my scholarship was to go on until I was 16, but when I got to age 14, I stopped school because I needed to help out with the business, baking. We were busy. That was my duty. But already, in 1914, well, you know what happened, war broke out. Well, there were all sorts of pals of mine from school flocking to the colours, and I wondered whether I should go. But my father wanted me to stay on with the baking. There was a Royal Fusiliers, they were recruiting in the town. And they had a band, and I played the cornet, so I was quite keen. But no, I continued with the baking. And as the months went by, more and more I felt torn. And one day I was walking down the High Street, and I came past a recruiting office for the Royal Marines, and there was a poster, and on the poster it said, "Join the Royal Marines, see the world in safety and comfort." It wasn't like that. In the end, as it turned out. I went in and I said, "I want to join the Royal Marines." The recruiting officer said, "Name? Hubert Trotman. Age? 17. "Oh no," he said. "You were too young. You have to go back to your mother for a while. Can you see? Can you see how old you have to be to join the Royal Marines?" How old? 18. He said, on the other hand, if you was to step outside into the street, turn round and come back in, you would be a little bit older, wouldn't you? So I went outside, came back in. I want to join the Royal Marines. Name? Well, he already had my name, didn't he? Age? 18. And that's how I joined. I got the King's Shilling. It's a bit battered. I've kept it all this time. 1914, King George V. That's what I got for signing up. You look after that, keep it till the end, and give it back to me, alright? Well, I went home to my father, and do you think he was happy? He needed me for the baking. I knew you were going to do it, Bert, he said. If you have to do it, you go. And I left and went off to Kent to Deal to do my training, and the instructor, well, he was a proper tin god. You couldn't so much as blink without his say-so. But he didn't have to turn out some men. Before long, I was sailing away from England, and I wondered if I'd ever return. There was a song we sang as we sailed away, and those at home sang it as well. Perhaps some of you know it. If you do, you can join in with the chorus. And if you don't know it, you can still join in, because it's quite simple. I've heard you're good singers here at Middlesbrough. They were summoned from the hillside, they were called in from the glen, and the country found them ready at the stirring call for men. Let no tears add to their hardships as the soldiers pass along, and although your heart is breaking, make it sing this cheery song. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though your lands are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver nation in distress, and we gave our glorious laddies honour bade us do no less. For no gallant son of Britain to a tyrant's yoke shall bend, and no English man is silent to the sacred call of friends. Keep the home fires burning while your hearts are yearning. Though your lands are far away, they dream of home. There's a silver lining through the dark clouds shining. Turn the dark clouds inside out till the boys come home. And you are good singers at Middlesbrough. Sailing off from the Kent shore, and away for quite a journey until we came to Turkey, the Dardanelles, and it was warm. We were packed in like sardines on that ship.
Wow.
And when we got there, we were one of the first boats, and the Turks up on the cliff, they were doing their job. They were firing down on us, bullets, shells. We got onto the shore, but we couldn't get a bridgehead. We couldn't get up an advanced position that night, so we hid among the rocks on the beach. But overnight, more and more troops came onto the shore, more tackle was brought on shore, and by the next night, we had made a bridgehead. We got right onto the cliff. We were fighting the Turks. My job was to haul the others up the cliff. And as I was doing that, I was on an overhang, and suddenly there was an almighty explosion next to me. I felt it in my left knee, and then the whole of the overhang came away, and we crashed all the way down the cliff to the beach below. I got two proper schoolboy knees, all bloody they were. I was taken off to the hospital ship, and that was the last fighting I saw. It took a while for my knee to heal, and then I was given light duties, which actually were quite heavy, because I had to go to carry the goods from ship to shore. So I was there for a few months, but after that we weren't making much progress in Turkey. They were fighting back so hard, and we were sent back all the way to England, and then straight out again to France, to northern France, the Somme, 1916. We got there in July. Conditions were very hard on the Somme. We were in trenches. We, the Marines, were behind the front lines. The army were advanced, and the army, they were fighting against the Germans, and if they could make a hole in the lines, then we were to push through that hole. But that never happened. The Germans held their line. So we had to wait. But what our job was to go forward at night and to bring back the bodies of our comrades who had fallen. We had to bring back a lot of bodies. The time was short because in July the nights weren't long. We couldn't give them individual graves. We had to bury several at once, but we gave them as much respect as we could. Well, time went on, it got colder as winter came, and the conditions in the trenches just got worse. It was frozen. The mud and the water froze, and we got frozen feet in our boots. Not only that, we had an infestation of lice. We had lice in our armpits, in all our clothes. We also got all sorts of conditions, bronchitis, for example. And all we had to eat was bully beef from a can, tins of beans, and hard biscuits. We called them dog biscuits. They were so hard to eat. It got harder and harder. And December came, and we were to have leave. 2 weeks leave. So we were taken off in cattle trucks on the rail and all the way to Calais. But there we were put in a long queue. It must have been a mile long. We were just waiting, and we asked what for, and they said for fumigation. We were going to be fumigated. In other words, they were going to smoke our bodies and our clothes and kill all the lice before we went back to England. The thing was, the queue wasn't moving forward. So somebody said, the ship's going to leave in an hour, let's slip away. So we slipped away, and down to the barrier, there was no one on the barrier. We slipped on board ship, and we hid. We'd be in all sorts of trouble if we were caught, but we weren't. No one discovered us. We sailed across the English Channel, and that night got the train up to London and couldn't get any further, so we slept on Paddington Station. The next day got the train home, walked down the high street to the bakery, and who came to the door but my mother? And she said, "Bert, you're home!" And suddenly I looked at myself. "Mother, I can't come in like this. Look at the state of me." And she said, "No, Bert, come in." I said, "Mother, look." And I put my hand inside my coat, and I brought it out, and it was full of lice. And I saw the tears run down her cheeks. You know, I wish I hadn't done that. I wish I hadn't showed her. I said, "I'll go up to the hospital and clean up. Then I'll be home." Didn't know what to do with the lice, so I put them back in. So I went up to the hospital where I knew the matron, and she took one look at me and said, "You need a bath." And she drew me a big, deep bath of hot water, and she put out an old sheet, and she said, "Put everything in the old sheet, and I'll come back when you call." So I took everything off, all my uniform, everything in that old sheet. I mean, you know, I hadn't had a bath or a change of clothes for 5 months. What's the longest you've been without... No, don't answer that question. 5 months it was. And I called her and she came and she took it all away. She picked up that sheet by the 4 corners. She carried it off like this up to the coppice to boil. And I had the most marvellous bath you could imagine. And while I was in that bath, matron, she sent home some clothes for me. So when I got out of the bath, I was able to get dressed in my own clothes. And I walked along the high street again and I stopped at the barber's. I had a haircut for 2 pence and a shave for a penny. 3 in all. How much do you pay for a haircut?
£7.50.
£7.50? Well, I never. For me, it was 3, and that included a shave. Did yours include a shave? No, I don't think it's quite old enough yet. 3 it was. I went home, and there were my mother, my brother, my sisters, and my father. And it was wonderful to be home. Well, I could tell it was taking a strain on my father, who had to run things on his own, and his worry about me. After 2 weeks, went over to Aldershot to sign back up again, but I left my uniform behind because it was in such a bad state. So I was wearing my ordinary civilian clothes, and I was waiting with the others returning from leave, and this sergeant called me. He said, "Come over here, you." I said, "But I'm returning from leave." "Do as I say." And I went over to him, and I tried to explain, but I was with the rookies, the new recruits. And I got an outfit with them, and I spent a whole week with the rookies before a message came through. "Hubert Trotman, missing on leave." Well, I thought I was going to be in all sorts of trouble. They had me up on the carpet. I managed to explain myself, though. Got away with it. But it wasn't my fault, was it? Well, anyway, I went over with the others who were already trained and already had been fighting, and over to Vimy Ridge in the north of France, where we joined Canadian forces, because the Canadians had so many men killed that some of us were assigned to them. I was with a Canadian officer, and that is where I went over the top and started fighting, proper fighting, but it was something I don't want to talk about, really. But what I do want to talk about is, well, actually, is there somebody here? Is it Matthew, is it? He's got some questions for me. Is that right, Matthew?
Yeah.
Can you ask them loud and clear so everyone can hear? What was the first question you wanted to ask, Matthew?
Which division were you in?
I was in the 63rd Royal Naval Division. And in that division there were 12 battalions in all. 8 battalions of naval men, 4 battalions of Marines. And I was in the 4th Battalion of Marines. You got another question?
Mm-hmm. Were you ever scared?
Do you think you would have been scared, Matthew? To be honest, I was. And I don't say there was any man who wasn't ever scared. We were all frightened. Some of us managed to deal with our fears. And some of us, well, found it more difficult. I was lucky. I was able to do what I needed to do in spite of fear. I'll give you an example. This Canadian officer I was assigned to, one morning after we were, got over the top, we were on lookout in no man's land, and it was all, it was misty, it was early morning, and I'd been sleeping, and he shook me, and he said, "Trotman, wake up." I said, "What is it?" And he pointed, and he said, "Look." And there, in the mist, I could see hundreds of Germans, and they were coming straight towards us. They were amassing for the attack. And I could tell this Canadian officer, he was stiff with fear. He said, "What are we going to do?" I said, "I know what I'm going to do." And he said, "What?" I said, "Run!" We got up and we started running. We ran back away, we were running for at least half an hour and telling everyone, "Get back, get back." But there was a terrible battle ensuing. Lots of men were killed. See, I was frightened, but I knew, I just reacted to it. What's your next question?
Did you want to be an officer?
No, I didn't. You see, it was just after that attack. I was in a bunker underground, and there was all these other soldiers, and so many people had been killed in that attack, but they knew who had been killed, whose bodies had been recovered, so they could identify the bodies. They knew who was sick and had been, or injured. But there were so many missing. They were saying, you know, have you seen so-and-so? Well, I was in this bunker, and sitting at the desk was General Trotman. Now, General Trotman, he was sitting, I looked at him, and he was the living spit of me, although he was older. And he looked at me, and he said, name? I said, Trotman, sir. That's my name, he said. Yes, sir. My father is your cousin, sir. You see, we'd never met, but I knew about him, and his father had been a colonel before him. And he looked at me and he asked me questions about my family and about my schooling as well. When he found out I'd been to grammar school, he said, well, you could be commissioned as an officer. Thing is, I think that him being from a military family, he was a bachelor himself and didn't have any children. He wanted me to carry on the family tradition of Trotmans in the military, you know. Well, I looked at him square and I said, no, sir, I don't want to be an officer. I'm a baker, and I've only signed up for the duration. As soon as the war's over, I'll be back to baking. Is that your last word? He said. I just want to remain one of the boys, I told him. Well, after that, he kept an eye on me, General Trotman. There was an occasion, I was in the trenches, and this new lieutenant came, and he said, who's Trotman? I am. He said, I've been told you're a reliable man. So in a way, it was clear that General Trotman was keeping an eye on me.
This is the last question. Do you think you were lucky?
I'm lucky that I'm still alive. I was lucky to survive, because so many of my pals never came home. But I don't think anyone could call themselves lucky to have witnessed what I saw and experienced what I went through. It's hard to explain, Matthew, but I was badly wounded, but I was lucky that I got badly wounded. Let me try to explain that. I was in a place called Passchendaele in 1917 in Belgium, and there was, before the war, Passchendaele had been this beautiful green valley with woodland and a stream trickling through. But by the time I got there in 1917, it had been shelled for 2 years, and it was no more than a sea of mud. The trees were all destroyed. And quite early on, just after I got there, July 1917, I got blown up, and I was taken out. 4 days after I was blown up, a great flood of mud came down the valley, a great slick of mud, and it drowned 42,000 men, including a lot of my pals. And after that, in the next 6 months, 500,000 men lost their lives at Passchendaele. So if I hadn't been badly wounded, I would have lost my life. So you see what I mean? I was lucky that I got badly wounded. Well, thank you for your questions, Matthew. Didn't he ask them well? Well done, thank you. Shall I tell you the story about how I got blown up? Yeah. Well, I was in the trench, and there was a lookout, and he said he saw some movement, and within an instant there was a massive explosion. I was blown miles up in the air, and I landed back on the ground with a bump on my back. And I was lying there, and I couldn't feel anything. I felt my body all over. I couldn't move my leg. I looked around. There were bodies lying around. Well, I just couldn't move, but I knew I needed to get away. So I managed to get over onto my belly, and I started crawling through the mud, just pulling myself forward with my hands through this wet mud. And after a long time, I came to some barbed wire. I couldn't climb over it, so I scrabbled in the mud and managed to claw my way underneath it, and I carried on going back. Finally, some men picked me up, and they carried me to a dressing station, and there I was put on an ambulance and trundled along until I came to a field hospital. Now, the field hospital had been a German hospital, but the British had won it from the Germans, and it was underground. And I was put on a stretcher, above ground, and it was like a helter-skelter. Went down and around, under the ground, and at the bottom there was a kind of catapult mechanism. It catapulted me onto a moving table. It was a bit like a conveyor belt. And I was carried along this conveyor belt until I came into a room, and there were men, and one of them cut off my clothes, and they washed me, and they painted something on my leg, I think it was iodine. And then I often carried on into another room where there were men in white coats and doctors. And one of them put something over my mouth, and he told me to count to 10. 1, 2, 3, 4. That was as far as I got, because then I was out. And when I came to, I sat up. Lie back down, they said. Well, I did look, and my leg had been in massive wounds, but they'd done some treatment on it, and they'd bandaged it up. And now I was put on like a light railway, an open truck, and there were 4 stretchers on each truck. I was wheeled along this, trundling along, until I came all the way across the border into France, to another hospital, which was like a huge shed. And when I got there, this truck stopped, and this huge woman came, and she lifted me up, like as easy as winking, and she put me down in the last bed that was free in that hospital. She was Canadian, matron in that hospital, and I said, "How tall are you?" 7 foot, she said. I tell you, she was as tall as she was wide, and as wide as she was tall. She had arms like trees. Well, the next morning, she brought me a glass of water and said, "You're in the right place, we'll look after you." And she got a little black book, and she asked me my name, my rank, and my number, and she wrote it all down. She said, "I write down the details of all the men I come here and I treat." And then I heard her whispering to the doctor, and I heard the doctor say, "His leg's going to need some healing." So I knew I was going to be needing treatment. Anyway, the next day, she came back in with an orderly, and the orderly had all these bundles in his arms, and I wondered what they were. But I soon found out they were blighty suits. Does anybody here know what blighty means? Blighty means England. And if we were a blighty suit, it means we were so badly injured that we couldn't stay there in France. We had to go back to England to properly get better and convalesce. We were all hoping we'd get a blighty suit so we could go home. So anyway, the matron comes around, she takes a blighty suit, she puts it on the end of one man's bed, and takes another one and puts it on the end of the other man's bed, and we're all wondering, she's smiling to herself. Then she goes to the first one and picks it up, and takes it to another man's bed, and then swaps the other one around, and she's laughing all the time. That's her idea of a joke. Who's going to get the blighty suit? Well, I got the 5th one. So I knew I was safe and going home. So I was taken on a train to Boulogne and then put on the hospital ship, and across the channel and through the porthole I saw the white cliffs of Dover. Now, if any of you ever sailed on a ferry from France or Belgium and seen the white cliffs of Dover, have you? It's a marvellous sight. I'm going home, it tells me. So I got back to England and taken up to hospital in London, and that was a marvellous hospital. They cooked my leg. They put hot fermentations on my leg, and they changed them every 2 hours, day and night, for 2 months, and it worked. After 2 months, I was up on my feet and using crutches to get around. I got to see London, Piccadilly Circus, Leicester Square, Trafalgar Square, Nelson's Column. When you been to Trafalgar Square, you know at the bottom there are these statues of animals. Which animal is it?
Lions.
That's right. I was sitting astride one of those stone lions in Trafalgar Square in 1917 when the American troops arrived in London. And they came marching along through Trafalgar Square and down the Mall towards Buckingham Palace with their colours flying, the band playing. It was a marvellous sight. They were 2 years too late, though, in my opinion. Now, when I was in London, I got to see many things, and we used to sing this song. It talks about London in the song. You know this song? Thought you might. I wonder if you can sing it as well as you sang the first one. That's the chorus. The verse, some of you might know that as well, by all accounts, tells a story. Up to mighty London came an Irishman one day. As the streets of pavement gold, sure everyone was gay, singing songs of Piccadilly, Strand and Leicester Square, till Paddy got excited and he shouted to them there. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye Piccadilly, farewell Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Paddy wrote a neat reply to Irish Molly-O, saying, should you not receive it, write and let me know. How's she going to do that? If I make mistakes in spelling, Molly dear, said he, remember it's the pen that's bad, don't lay the blame on me. When I was at school and I made a spelling mistake, I used to blame the pen. You do that? No. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye Piccadilly, farewell Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Molly wrote a neat reply to Irish Paddy-O, saying Mike Maloney wants to marry me, and so leave the Strand and Piccadilly, or you'll be to blame, for lovers fairly drove me silly, hoping you're the same. It's a long way to Tipperary, it's a long way to go. It's a long way to Tipperary, to the sweetest girl I know. Goodbye Piccadilly, farewell Leicester Square. It's a long, long way to Tipperary, but my heart's right there. Marvellous. Finally, I was once again in A1 condition. I've been wounded twice. First time it was in my knee. Second time it was my leg. And you know what happened the third time? The third time I was shot. Do you want to know what happened? Yeah. I'll tell you, but I wonder if you can guess. Now let me tell you something. I was a Royal Marine, and that meant I spent a long time on the sea, but sometimes I ended up in the sea. Yeah. What do you think happened to me? Just whisper to your partner a moment. Whisper to the person next to you. What do you think?
So what happened to the boat?
Officers, NCOs, men. That made you stop, didn't it? Put your hands down, I'll tell you what happened and you can see if it's the same as what you imagined. In A1 condition I was to Aldershot, and there 100 of us who had been injured but were now in A1 condition, or so they called it, were lined up on the parade ground. And a colonel comes in on a horse, the horse walks up and stops in front of us, and the colonel looks at us, officers, NCOs, men. you have been assigned a hazardous operation. If any of you, for any reason, cannot take part in this hazardous operation, speak up now. Well, it was silent, just like you. Not a pin drop, you could have heard. Thank you, you have all volunteered. Well, we were taken down to Chatham, Kent, and there we set sail. We didn't know where we were going. No one had told us. It was only once we were on the ship that we were given our ammunition. And across the channel. Well, I know now where we were going. We were going to Zeebrugge in Belgium. So that was where the Germans had their U-boats in the harbour, their submarines. And our mission, the Navy, was to destroy those submarines and to destroy the German fleet. Well, we came on shore, and we were one of the last boats on shore on this occasion, and as we came on shore, a great shell exploded on our boat, and there was a mess. But the officer said, keep going, so up onto the shore I went, carrying my rifle and my gear, and I went running with the others along the harbour. We went along the harbour wall, the promenade there, along the front, and all the time the British warships were bombing the harbour and trying to destroy those submarines, and then even sunk a block ship at the entrance so that no vessels could get in or out of the harbour. Anyway, came along this promenade, and there was a barricade, and behind it was a trench that had been dug, and we got down into that trench. But there were so many of us, the trench was full. So the officer said, anyone from 16th platoon, get out. This trench is too full. Well, I was in 16th platoon, wasn't I? I didn't do anything though, didn't know where to run. Anyone from 16th platoon, get out, and that's an order. Well, I had no choice. I got out of the trench and I started running back the way I'd come, along the harbour, back towards the sea, but there were no boats there anymore. And all the time there were bullets flying around my ears, like a swarm of bees. And I ran, and as I ran, I threw down my gear, I took off my rifle, I threw that down, I got off my jacket, and I threw that down, I got to the harbour, I went over, dived down into the sea below. And it was only when I was in the sea that I got my boots off, and that was hard. And all the time there were bullets splashing in the sea all around me. And I started swimming. Now fortunately I'm a strong swimmer, so I swam out and out and out from the shore. But after a while I was exhausted. I stopped and was treading water and looking, and I could see far out, about a mile out from shore, there was a British ship. So I started swimming again, but this time steadying. And I swam steadily out there for must have been ages. And finally I got to the ship. But just as I was getting to it, the screws started turning and the ship started moving away. Fortunately, the rope netting dragged in the water and I clung onto it, and I managed to pull myself up the netting a short way. And at that time, the seamen on the ship, they saw me, and then they called me up onto the deck. I was exhausted. Let me get my clothes off, it was dripping wet, and there was blood pouring down my legs. And they called the MO, medical officer, and he came and he looked and he laid me down on my belly and he said, "You've been shot in the buttock." He got his pair of tweezers and he reached right into the wound and he pulled out this bullet. I hadn't even realised I'd been shot. Whether I'd been shot when I was running or whether I was shot when I was swimming, I cannot tell you. But somehow, in the desperation to survive, I hadn't even felt it. And in fact, of all the 3 wounds I've told you about, this was by far the least serious. But I keep this bullet, I keep it on my mantelpiece as a memento. So the end of the war. Does anybody know what year the war finished? Yes?
Is it 1918?
1918. And I wonder if anybody here knows the date of the armistice when all war was over? Who's sure? You sure? Exactly. The 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. I was in Belgium. We were on a battlefield, and at 10 o'clock in the morning we were still fighting, and an order came through with a messenger saying we had to get to this railway embankment, which is about a mile away, so we had to make quick progress across the battlefield, and the Germans were firing on us. But we got there and bedded down at this railway embankment, and at 11 o'clock on the dot it all just went silent. And then you could hear in the distance the church bells ringing from the Belgian churches around. War was over. And then a band struck up. And I looked along, and along the railway embankment came marching the Royal Marine Band. And riding in front of them was General Trotman in his uniform and on his horse. And he stopped right in front of me. I stood at the salute and I said, "Permission to speak, sir." "Granted." "Is the war over, sir?" "It is." And the lad behind me, named Harry, said, "I knew it was over, sir." "How?" "It's the first time we've seen a general in uniform at the front line, sir." Well, he didn't know what to say to that. He just said, "Stay in your positions. You never know what the Germans might do." He rode off. Well, I stayed there. Tension. I don't know what happened. I must have passed out or fallen asleep on my feet. I was there for what seemed like a long time, and I came to, and I looked round, and all the other men had gone. They'd left their gear there on the ground, and they'd gone, and I was all alone. I wandered off to the nearest village, and there the locals, the Belgian villagers, were handing out loaves of bread and hunks of cheese to the British. And there was an awful noise coming from one building, so I went over to have a look. It was a brewery. And I went inside, and there were vats of beer at different stages of fermentation. And there were men standing around these vats of beer, and they were dipping their faces into the beer and taking a long draught, and coming up again, and then shaking their faces from side to side. And all the froth from the beer went flying off them. Just like when you see a dog come out of the sea and they shake off the froth. Have you seen that? Just like that. So I went over and joined them, and I dipped down and I took a drink of beer as well, and that was the end of it. No more fighting. I never fought again in my life. I'm not a fighting man, if I'm honest with you. I'm a baker. Which reminds me, when I did get home, it was 2 o'clock in the morning, several weeks later. And my mother brought me in, made me a cup of tea, and I said, "Where's Father?" And she said, "He's in bed, he's in a bad way. He's been that worried about you, Bert, being away all this time. Bert, would you do the baking tonight?" And that first night I got home, I did the baking. My father, he never baked again. He died not long after that war, and I put it down to the fact he was so worried about me. Like I said, we were as one, my father and I. It wasn't just the people fighting at the front line that suffered, it was those left behind as well. And the torment and the worry. But just to finish with something funny, 20 years after the war, I was delivering to a club I often went to. I went into that club, into the bar, and the bar manager was away on holiday, and there was this other person at the bar. And I recognised her. She was huge, 7 foot tall. And I went up to her and I said, "Are you Canadian? Weren't you a matron in the war in France?" And she said, "I was. Have you still got your little black book?" And she went off and she fetched it. And I looked it up, July the 8th, 1917, and that was my name, Hubert Trotman. She remembered me and I remembered her, all those years later. She was on a working holiday from Canada, and she was filling in for this manager while he was off on his leave. Can you imagine that? What are the chances of that happening? Yeah. So many of my friends didn't come home. Fortunately, I did. But I light a candle to remember them, out of respect. Let's just sing that chorus one more time, shall we? You've got such wonderful singing voices at Middlesbrough. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
That was really interesting, wasn't it? That was great. Well, can I just ask one question?
Yes. Well, I was going to wait and say at the end of the workshop.
That's
I will
fine.
know, but I will say now.
Now.
Pip, Squeak and Wilfred, that's what we call them. And all of us who served through the war, and got to the end in 1918, after the war was over, we were awarded these 3 medals. Everyone who served in Navy, Army, and the Air Force. Pip is the nickname for the 1914-15 Star. Squeak is the nickname for the British War Medal. And Wilfred is the nickname for the Victory Medal.